On this episode of The Open Road, we're having a bit of an identity crisis. So we've finally got our hands on the new Corvette Stingray C8. Now, this has been out for a while and it's taken about 18 months to actually get this car to this country, thanks COVID. Now, because a lot of the content's already been out about this and you probably know what you think you know, I'm going to tell you what you don't know. And I'm going to tell you my opinion. So the first and possibly one of the most controversial things about this car is they took the engine from the front and they stuck it behind the driver. Is that a good thing? Well, is it trying to be something that it's not? Now, it's one of those things where it actually was a design back in the 50s that was a concept that a lot of people actually really like and hasn't actually come to fruition until about 70 years later. Why is that? We don't know. Why did they do it? I'm sure there's an answer. But the point is that they've now done it and this is what we've got. Now let me show you around the outside of the car and then the inside of the car, and then as per usual we will take it for a drive. Now, one of the first things that you notice about this car is there is a bit of a duality going on where the front doesn't kind of really match the back. Now normally I like a big thick rear end, but on this particular car I think they've done it just a little bit too much. Now if I block the back of the car and you just look at it from here forward, very, very tasty. However, you add the back end in and it just doesn't seem to kind of fit to me. Now this is obviously personal preference. If you like it, and hey, more power to you. But personally, I think that there's a really weird thing going on where this has got a lot of European influence from obviously things like Ferraris, and it's still an American brute. Do those things match? So in terms of storage, you've got a little bit of storage in the front there and you've got a bit of storage in the back there. Now, when you raise the back of the car and you open it up, you get to see your beautiful engine, and it's actually really nicely well lit at night so you can show it off to your friends. One thing I noticed today, because we are fighting the weather today, is that when you lift that up and all the rain comes back down through the vents, it lands on your engine and you just hear all the water like shh off the hot engine. That was kind of funny. Now, getting in and out of this car isn't actually as bad as you may think for most sports cars, particularly of this ilk. But if you're a little bit tall or you're a little bit fat, you might struggle. I actually do fine, thanks, but yeah, look. We've got a nice little hidden door handle release just under this fin here. The doors are very long. You do need to keep account for that in car parks, but then just slide your backside in and we are, I mean, that was easy. Now this is also the entry level model. So what that basically means is that there's two models above this in terms of, you know, fanciness, and they come with like extra little canards and like skirts and things of that nature. I think it actually looks great as it is, aforementioned comments aside, but yeah, no, I think this actually looks great. This car is such a head turner and I will drive this through the city, and I took this through the city yesterday with a friend just for something to do, you know, to get to know it so we can evaluate it, because we're serious motoring journalists. But yeah, no, just people stopping, taking photos. There's only one or two of these in the country already anyway, so I do have to be careful with it, and I do need to like not do silly things because they're gonna know it was me. The glaringly obvious thing as soon as you get into this car is this massive divider between the two seats. Every single one of these buttons is purely for climate control. That's all this does. Your rear view mirror is not a mirror at all. It is a camera connected to a screen that looks like your rear view mirror. Now, this is probably one of the better ones I've ever actually experienced because it's got a very, very sharp and clear display. The only downside to this one is the refresh rate. And basically what that means is if you've got someone behind you who's got LED lights, it looks like they're flashing and that gets unnecessary attention from while you're trying to drive. Other than that, it's actually really cool. As soon as you get in and you look over your shoulder, which I tend to do quite often when driving around tight-ass car parks, is trying to look in your blind spot. Now this has a massive one. Something I really appreciate about the dash in this car is the fact that you can take it from all of this nonsense, which I personally think is way too much, and we can just simplify. And then all you get is all you need, and it looks nice and clean, and it's not too distracting. The infotainment system is straight across from GM. It's nice, it works, I like it, no complaints. And the sound system in this is absolutely banging. That's probably enough talk though. Shall we just double tap that button? It does sound nice. So probably one of the first things you notice as soon as you get in is that this is a very, very driver-orientated car, which I like. The whole dash and everything is all wrapped around and focused at the driver, which is cool. It makes you feel like you're the most important thing in the world. And if you watched Top Gun recently, then that's a cool feeling. A few people were asking how this thing maneuvers around the city, and for the most part, it's actually really good. It's not a difficult car to drive, and once you get a good idea of where your corners are, it's really not a chore at all. It's actually really, really easy. The only thing I did notice, which I've actually questioned GM about because it seems a bit odd, and I haven't got an answer yet, and when I do, I'll let you know, but at full lock, moving forward in this car, whether it's raised or lowered, the suspension tends to bind, and I don't know if that's like a caster thing or what, but it does seem like a bit of an issue that needs to be addressed. I don't know what it is. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe I'll let you know as soon as possible. But in all fairness, that's almost the only negative I've got about this car. Other than that, I've actually found this car really hard to fault. Like, you know, we make these shows, we want to try and find critical things and be like, well, you know, try and give a balanced opinion or whatever it is. But I mean, outside of that and the fat ass, I actually really, really like this car, and there's very little that you can actually fault with it. One of the things may be a slight aesthetics thing where you might want a bit more of a body kit or whatever it is, and that will come in the higher spec cars. But this is the first one that we got, so this is what it came with. But even with the base spec, in person, this is probably one of the key things. In person, this car looks so much better than it does in photos. You certainly notice very quickly when you're driving this around town how much attention this car gets. I mean, this is one of the only ones of this car in the country at the moment anyway, and it is in bright yellow, which is a lot, but more importantly is it is a very eye-catching car because it's a little bit all over the place. It looks like a supercar, it sounds like a supercar, it more or less goes like a supercar, but it's American. So I've been making the joke to friends that this is sort of a American Ferrari, so it's a little bit dumb, which actually is unfair, but you know, it's a joke, so don't take it too seriously. But let's look at the similarities between something like this and something like, let's say, a 458 Ferrari. What are they? They're a mid-mounted V8 sports car, two-door, and you're looking, the major noticeable difference, which really puts this car in a different position to something like that, aside from the price, is the displacement. You know, those Ferraris are like under 4 litres or around 4 litres or whatever it is. This is a 6.2 litre V8. Now, that means, the main thing that means is the speed at which it revs and the torque that it puts out. And those two things play a significant role in the characteristics of this car, and thus the personality of this car. So many people stopping and looking and taking out their phones and taking photos and stuff. I mean, that's cool, but see, this is one of the things about a car like this. Would I really want this much attention? Absolutely not. That's actually kind of a good point. When you buy something like this, or even like, I've just, you know, from what I've experienced from driving it, is that you get so much different attention from, well, everybody really. This is the thing with something like this, is that when you know, if you go and buy yourself a fancy car and you smash it all over Instagram, like I've been doing, and give us a follow, by the way, it's one of those things where you start to get a blanket of attention, you know, and some of it's attention that you want, you know, pretty young lady wants to go for a drive and then, you know, stuff after. But then you get, you know, the thing is, like, I've stopped to put gas in this or whatever, or just pulled up and stopped, and the amount of dudes that just come up and they want to yarn about the car, they want to look at it, I get it. And like, I'm a car guy, don't get me wrong, I enjoy those kind of conversations, but you just get an absolute blanket of attention all of the time. You can't turn it off because this car is always eye-catching, and it is actually a bit of a showstopper. Of everything I've driven, absolutely everything, this has had by far and away the most attention, phones out, all of that sort of thing. And yeah, honestly, I don't really like it. Oh, important motoring journalism. Blind spot in this is ridiculous. You can't see anything. If you want to change lanes in the CBD, you just have to hope and pray. I tell you what though, driving this car through the city, I've actually noticed it's a lot more comfortable than I was expecting. I don't know if you guys have driven any like high-end supercars or whatever it is. He says as it goes for a shudder through the gear. But a lot of the time when you drive, you know, your McLarens, your Ferraris, whatever it is, you get it, you expect a rough ride and then it's rougher, okay? This is so comfortable. The thing that I've noticed with this is that it's got a large wheel with a small tyre. Yeah, okay, performance, I get that. But the suspension in this is really, really, really well done. I've got to say, I expected this to be a rough ride. I've driven this exclusively in sport because I want the exhaust note. And in sport, around city, going over all of the manholes and our terrible roads in this country, it's actually been really comfortable. And this is something that you've got to factor in because, again, going back to the thing about attention, you want the young lady's attention, you get the young lady's attention despite your looks and personality, and then you take her out for dinner and in a car that's, you know, rigid and uncomfortable with seats that are made of plastic or wood, and she's not having a good time. You get to the restaurant, she's already grumpy. This is super comfortable. The seats are firm, but they're not unreasonable, and the ride is really comfortable. I'm very impressed with the suspension in this car. So what else? Creature comforts and stuff. The systems in this car are the same GM system everywhere, and you've got the Android Auto that works really nicely. As soon as you get in the car, it plays what you're playing in the house from Spotify. That's nice. It just goes straight across. Maps are really good. The sound system in this is really, really good, but whoever had it before me had way out of tune. Like, it was just horrific EQ on it. But I've fixed that now, and now the sound system sounds amazing. I've been cranking, what am I listening to? Post Malone. It's got every mod con you can think of, heating and cooling seats, the air con's really good, the heating's really good. We've got a heated steering wheel, thanks America. I actually used that this morning because it was very cold, and it works really well to the point where I was actually a little bit not that keen to touch it. But hey, it works. Alright, we're cruising on the motorway now, nice and comfy. Again, the suspension in this is really, really nice. There are so many things I see coming up and I'm like, oh, that's going to be a bump, and it's not. It just eats it up really, really well. It's got the clever suspension going on, so it's thinking about stuff and it's adjusting all the time, and that comes through like it really does. It's a really, really nice ride. Big bumps and things that you expect that are going to throw you around, not an issue. We need to talk about this engine, because this engine is what separates this from any other sports car. Like I said, in your Ferraris and your other high-end pasta rockets, you've got low displacement, and then you end up with a very revvy engine. Because this is a 6.2 litre, and this is the LT block, it is revvier than the old LS block, but not by a lot. And comparatively to something like a Ferrari, it still takes a while for it to get its shit together and go, oh, I'm an engine, you want power? Let me think about it. Yeah, okay, send the power, and then you get the power. And even when you start getting that power, if you're starting from your sort of 3,000, you don't really get it until about 4.5, and then it takes you up to a 6,000 RPM redline. So it is all at the top, and it takes a little while to get there. Now, other sports cars, you expect it to bang through the revs and you're banging through the gears. This isn't like that. If you do a standing start from a motorway on-ramp or whatever it is, and you start in second gear because you're already rolling, you are doing illegal speeds by the time you change gear. So you only get one blast out of it. You don't get to bang through the gears. And that's down to the fact, partly, that it's got such long legs in its 8-speed gearbox, which I think is unnecessary. I would have changed the ratios significantly to make this more playful. But, you know, I did have a really good question come up from Glenn in our community group, and that was, does it still feel like an HSV? And the short answer to that is no, not even a little bit. The longer version of that is, what is an HSV to you? Commodore, Club Sports, big angry engines in a very simple sedan, right? Family car with overpowered, that makes lots of noise, does really good burnouts. but ultimately is a nice big cushy cruiser, right? Well, that's not what this is. This isn't even remotely close to the same idea as that. The only thing that it shares is the engine type. That's it. The people that this car is going to attract, if we're going to put it into those terms, is completely different. And thus the personality of this car is very different, which means if you like a car for its personality, are you going to like this? And again, I would say that if you're very vigilant to what you like, the short answer to that would be, again, no. Because this has got such a specific personality, albeit a confused one, or at least a little bit lost, that it's just not that. Not even a little bit. We've got 2 seats, not 4. This is not going to be a fantastic long distance cruiser, and you know, we're Kiwis, we like to eat up the miles. It's just not. It's just a very, very different kettle of fish. And that's okay, but it's not what it is. A GMSV. It's not an HSV. What's that? How much is it worth? Well, if you want to purchase this car, the base buy-in is about $180,000, which can be optioned up to about $200,000. But then the kicker is if you do go down today and you order one, you've got a minimum 18 months before you get your butt in these seats, which I'm not comfortable with. And then if there's any further delays from, like, you know, the major global crises that we're dealing with at the moment, there's going to be even longer. And by the time that happens, especially if you're bringing it to New Zealand, our Prime Minister would have banned anything that remotely resembles fun, and there'd be no point in having it anyway. Something that people from outside New Zealand probably don't know is that our roads, for lack of a better word, are shit. So what that tends to mean is when you go and get a high-end car that's designed for either like light track use or just roads that aren't covered in potholes and all sorts of other crap, it means that the cars generally will be quite unsettled and they will have a real big struggle with how undulating our roads are. This is doing a really good job. We're currently cruising around West Auckland on State Highway 16, which is a notoriously bad piece of road, at about 69 kilometers an hour. Nice. And it's handling it really well. It's not amazing, but it's handling it pretty well. Even on these back roads, we're not pushing it, we're just cruising. But even on these back roads where we're just cruising along, it's still going in often to that V4 half-cylinder shutdown mode, which is obviously going to save us fuel. Now, I appreciate that because fuel ain't getting any cheaper, and it's snuck up again, isn't it? So that's nice to have. I do like the steering wheel. The square steering wheel is very cool. And again, just goes back to that fighter pilot feeling. It's a little bit harder if you rest your hand on top, but other than that, very cool. And I guess that's the thing about this car. That is the thing specifically about this car, is how does it make you feel? And I start at a very high level of I feel cool, and this is just elevating that quite a lot, because we're in this sports car, we've got that noise, we've got that potential power, which we can't put down today because it's raining, but we've got all of these things, all of these aspects adding up together to create a very, very, very cool experience, which makes you feel cool. And if it makes you feel cool, then is it worth it to you to spend the money on feeling cool? Because at the end of the day, when you get a car that's this, we're not talking about something that's utilitarian, we're talking about something that is pure pleasure. If it makes you feel good, then it's worth it. Now, that being said, if you're only spending the money because of what you want other people to think about you, yeah, that's never a good idea. Something that you do notice at low speed, and I'm noticing again now, is the build quality. And it's not really a build quality thing, it kind of is, but I'm noticing that this roof is kind of moving around a bit because all of the structure of this is in the base, not in the roof, because it's not connected. So there is a bit of movement, you can hear a bit of play. Is that the end of the world? No, it's just another one of those trade-offs for having the ability to take it off. Does it bother me? No, as soon as you put a bit of music on, you don't hear it, and it's the same with the light engine noise that you can hear. There's a bit of tappity engine noise when you're just cruising around with no music playing. But again, mild trade-off for feeling very, very cool. Well, that's the new Chevy Corvette Stingray. Now, say what you will, let's have the conversations in the comments below. I'll get back to all your questions and stuff as soon as I can. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Get subscribed because we're going to do more on this car, track, more in depth, things like that. We've got some other really interesting cars coming up in the near future. And yeah, we really just appreciate you guys' support, and we can keep doing this sort of thing and having a bit of fun. So yeah, thanks for watching. Also, lastly, if you're not on the website, make sure you go watch this on the website, because there'll be a lot more information, all the tech specs, a bit more conversation, more imagery, and links to other social platforms you can get involved with. So yeah, make sure you go visit the website, because there's so much more there. And yeah, get subscribed, and we'll see you next time on the open road. Thanks for watching.